Hi, I'm Mark Stewart, Prep Editor of the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Welcome to the first edition of Preps Plus Extra, where each week we'll talk about some of Friday's big games, as well as talk about some of the top prep issues of the day. With me this week is JR Radcliffe, Sports Editor of CNI. How you doing, JR?
I'm doing very well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Let's start off this first episode with some big news from the WIAA. It's basketball season, but football dominated the news earlier this week with the news that the WIAA is going to stick with the 9-game schedule heading into beginning in 2013. There was some question of whether they would go to maybe a 7-game schedule with, the possibility of playing 10 games and some other ideas out there. But in essence, we'll have the 9-game schedule, which is what we've pretty much always had. But more intriguing to me is the idea now that we're going to have true seeding for the playoffs. You've seen some of the pairings over the years. Is there any way this doesn't work?
I don't think so. I mean, they've had a lot of ideas over the past couple of years, and I actually think some of the plans have been pretty good in place to sort of compromise and get everybody happy with the process. The most recent thing being in sort of an all-play format where you have, like you were talking about, 7 weeks regular season, and then sort of everybody starts in that 8th week as a playoff, and we kind of go from there. But, simpler was probably better here. It's easier to work with, and in this case, having the coaches seed the 18 pods, I guess you could call them themselves, it makes a lot of sense. The missing piece that disallowed that from happening before now is that we've always started the season too late and had that whole 3 games in 10 days situation where they had to sort of rush the playoffs and really finagle a lot of games in a short period of time. They moved the schedule back. They started practice August 1st this year. And I think what they saw was, hey, this isn't that bad. We can get away with doing this. I know a lot of people initially were concerned about the shortness of the season from the summer season building into the fall season. People weren't happy with the timing. But now that we know that people are okay with the August 1st start date, and it seems like in practice it worked for a lot of people, now there is that time between the seeding process and the first round of the playoffs where we can get the coaches, on a teleconference, get them on the same page, and have them seed a group of 8 teams. I mean, it's a simple solution. It makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the key points that you just made was the idea that there was so much made about this early start, and I really didn't get it. We're talking pushing the season up 5 days, but coaches were all up in arms about it. Didn't turn out as bad as a lot of people may have thought. The other key part with the playoff seeding is now in the past the WIAA had a restriction that teams in the same conference couldn't play each other in the first round. Right now, that's no longer in place. So we'll have some true seeding, and we won't have these crazy brackets that we've had in the past. The other interesting news that came out of the WIAA yesterday was the future of the boys and girls basketball tournaments. Right now, there's some discussion about will the tournament stay at the Kohl Center, which has some scheduling conflicts, and if it does stay at the Kohl Center, the WIAA is going to have to make some adjustments to its calendar in terms of when it hosts those state tournaments, or will it move to the Resch Center in Green Bay? If you were if you could put a bug in Dave Anderson's ear, the executive director of the WIAA, what would you tell him?
I don't think he'd take my advice, but one thing that always seems like it plays too big a role in my mind is the idea of tradition, especially as it trumps what's practical. I mean, the UW-Madison Fieldhouse sounds like it would have to be the venue if they cannot use the Kohl Center, which absolutely looks like will be the case. It doesn't look like they're going to be able to use the Kohl Center in the coming years. And the Fieldhouse, it's an older venue. I mean, yes, there's a lot of nostalgia there. Yes, the tournament would stay in Madison, but there'd be a lot of shuttles involved. The parking situation would be a nightmare. I don't know how big a deal that is, but I look at the Resch Center, and no, it's not in the nation's capital, but it's in the shadow of Lambeau Field. It's a beautiful facility. I do have a question about capacity. I don't know if it's certainly going to hold much less than the Kohl Center. Pretty comparable to the Fieldhouse, a little bit less, right. So I don't know if that's an issue they're working through. But I love the Resch Center. I think it's comfortable. I think it's beautiful. I don't think it's going to be a problem for people to park at Lambeau Field and walk across the street and enjoy the state basketball tournament. I know a lot of people will feel differently. They like having it in the sort of the central southern part of the state. But if I'm looking at it, I think the Resch Center is probably an ideal location if the Kohl Center isn't available.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you. I was at the meeting yesterday or earlier this week when when the people from Green Bay came in and in essence pitched their plan to the WIAA, and I think a lot of times I look at this as sort of like a high school recruiting. When you're being recruited as an athlete, you say, okay, who's recruiting me the most? Who wants me the most? Who's who really needs me? And I just get that feeling from Green Bay. I think having the state tournament in Green Bay is more important to Green Bay than, it is to UW-Madison to have it on its campus. And heck, let's see maybe what happens. Give it a 5-year run or whatever that the WIAA wants to settle on, and let's see how the rest center works. At least that's my feeling right now. Let's shift to the court, where the real action's going on. Sussex Hamilton intrigues me just because they've been a program that traditionally hasn't been good except for the last couple of years. What's kind of been behind their great start?
You have to hand it to Coach Dan Carey. He came in a couple years ago, and this is a program that 2 years ago had their first winning season for the first time in 20 years. So, in a very short period of time, Carey's come in with a lot of energy. He was on Joel Clausen's staff with the boys team at Milwaukee Pius, actually, and he came in and he's paid immediate dividends.
Another interesting race on the boys' side Friday night. McGuanago comes to Milwaukee Pius. At the beginning of the year, I don't know if we would have thought that McGuanago had a chance to be in first place at this stage of the season, but if they beat Pius, they'll be tied for first place in the Classic 8. What makes McGuanago go?
Well, they actually have 0 seniors on that roster, which is amazing considering that they weren't supposed to do anything necessarily this year. They've got a very good rebounding presence. You look at junior Nate Tangway, sophomore Dominic Sizoskis. Those two guys can really get the boards with the best of them. They're probably the best rebounding team in the Classic 8, and they've already beaten the 3 teams that you would think would have been favorites coming into the season, that being Pius the first time around, and then Waukesha West. They've split 2 games with West, and Arrowhead they won just a couple weeks ago. So because they're a young team, there's still some hiccups, kind of a puzzling loss to Hartford in non-conference play,
right.
A loss to Kenosha Tremper they probably would say that they could have had, but going to Pius will be a challenge. They had a 20-point lead on them in the second half last year and ended up losing that game. So Pius very, very quick, in probably a man-to-man game. They're probably the quicker, better team, but McGuanago switched to a zone in their first meeting, and they were able to slow them down long enough to take control of that game and win by a couple possessions. So I think it could be a very good game. McGuanago, I'm sure, they're excited about the team they have now. They've had a lot of talent the last few years. They haven't been able to put it all together. And finally, they have this young core of players that just seems to be clicking. That sophomore and junior class work very well together, and they're obviously making some headway.
Yes, a definite changing of the guard in the Classic 8, where either you're going to have Pius, which hasn't won a conference title in a few years, or you're going to have maybe McGuanago come up and continue to surprise people. Another key game on Friday night will be Beaver Dam goes to Wisconsin Lutheran. Wisconsin Lutheran has won, I believe, 6 straight Wisconsin Little 10 titles. At the start of the year, Beaver Dam beat them, but lately it seems like Wisconsin Lutheran's putting some things together. So I guess that'll be another game that we all can look out for as we head into the weekend.
Wisconsin Lutheran, they do a great job with their non-conference schedule. They're one of these teams that plays everybody through the course of the year, and that at the end of the year, that's going to pay off. So we'll see second time through what they can do with Beaver Dam. Right.
We'll definitely keep our eye out for that. But that wraps up our first edition of Preps Plus Extra on JS Online. We'll see you next week. You can also catch me on Preps Plus on today's TMJ4 at 11 p.m. on Sunday night. Take care.